Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, good evening, all. And this venture is actually the new one. LGRF and Cochin Institute of International Arbitration are the two long-term partners of one of our long-term program, complete lawyering, and this is actually the second venture of LGRF and Cochin Institute of International Arbitration. So ultimately, as you know that one of the important purpose of LGRF is legal profession reforms and judicial reforms, where one of the major concerns that LGRF is put forward is the delay in civil and criminal cases. So, as you know that as per the doctrine of separation of power, the monopoly of adjudication is completely vested in the hands of judicial system. But judicial system has a lot of disadvantages. So that is the reason why the 42nd constitutional amendment is a very genuine constitutional amendment, incorporated a new provision in Indian Constitution, Article 39, Capital A of Indian Constitution, which ensure equal justice and free legal aid. So after that, we enacted a legislation in 1986, the Arbitration and the Legal Service Authorities Act. And after 10 years in 1996, we enacted the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, 1996. So I think arbitration is a best method of ADR mechanism because of many reasons. So LGRF, this is a long-term project of LGRF because we have already certain long-term projects like a complete lawyering, which is in association with the same Cochin Institute of International Arbitration and TDP, Teachers Development Program, and Constitutional Literacy Program in association with the Mandapa Science Foundation and Hindustan University. And also recently we initiated a new program, reforms in government law colleges in Kerala. So I think Cochin Institute of International Arbitration, very experienced institution in the field of arbitration, because it is very essential to understand the flexibility of the arbitration while comparing the judicial system is a very important thing. So we are planning to provide a course for arbitration, and as you know that we already selected our conveners, Sunita, Advocate Sunita, the state treasurer of LGRF is the convener of the program, along with Nilima, joint secretary of LGRF Trivandrum chapter. And also we selected coordinators of the program, Amina Uttara, Aishwarya and Gauri Shankar, and also many responsible persons like Visruth, the vice president of LGRF, and joint secretary Sandeep is also associating with this program. So today is only an introductory class where two eminent personalities are with us. Advocate Johnson, the director of the Cochin Institute of International Arbitration, and Mary Sport, a professor of Gujarat National Law University. So basically, this is an interactive section because they will explain the flexibility of arbitration. Because arbitration proceedings is a very flexible method in the case of appointment of arbitrators and determining the number of arbitrators, place of arbitrators, language to be used in the arbitration proceedings, the qualification of arbitrator, and what extent the court can interfere in arbitration proceedings, and the finality of arbitral award. So, because we have a lot of doubts as far as our students are concerned, and as far as our the members of LGRF is concerned, and this is only an introductory class, but we are planning to introduce a new course on arbitration. That is our long-term goal. So we will give all details of the program. I think within 1 week, we will make a detailed plan of this course. So on behalf of LGRF, I welcome Advocate Johnson Gomez, the Director of Cochin Institute of International Arbitration, and Mary Sport, the Professor of National Law University, Gujarat. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Uttara?
Thank you so much, sir. Up next, I am indeed delighted to welcome Advocate Johnson Gomez, Director, Cochin Institute of International Arbitration, our today's speaker, to enlighten us with his words on the topic. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Uttara. This is a program where we do not wish to be talking in the normal method of a speaker speaking for some 45 minutes and the other speaker speaking for another 45 minutes. And then we go for, here we are trying to do something different, where we just want you to be encouraged to read and study the provisions of Arbitration and Conciliation Act, especially Part 1 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which is actually a copy, a more or less copy of the model law, which has been formulated by the UNCITRAL. And we have similar laws, national laws, in many jurisdictions. And today we will be trying to explain to you what is arbitration, what are the basic principles of arbitration, how different is arbitration from litigation or other ADR mechanisms available. So this will be an interactive session, and now I can introduce Mr. Mary Sport. He is a professor in the Gujarat Law University, and he has an excellent profile. Last day we were discussing about, in fact, we were talking about this topic for quite long. Nearly more than 2 years ago, we had a discussion about how to formulate a curriculum for arbitration on a local level, so that we have a good training module. And this discussion was continuing for quite some time, and now once Safi Mohan sir was mentioning about this, I thought that Mary Sport would be the best person who could present one version of the concept. Now we will be moving forward based on a method where Mary Sport is basically a person who is coming from academics, and I am a person who is on the other side, where I am engaged in actual work as an arbitrator as well as an arbitration counsel in many matters. So our perspectives are likely to be different in many matters. I think that that will be helpful for the entire team members to get different perspectives about a very single concept. Same concept, you will have different versions. So I would like, maybe we will be sharing some ideas. We will be at times we will be having critical views about certain provisions, and these things will enable you to get some better understanding about the whole arbitration principles. So we will have a small presentation also, and each slides we will stop and we will hear the views of Mr. Marisport. That is the process where we will be moving forward. I think regarding the procedure, Mr. Marisport, do you want to mention something so that we can start?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, and thanks, Mohan, sir, and even entire team who was instrumental in this event. And I welcome all the young budding lawyers and even professor students who are becoming a lawyers. In fact, this course and especially this interactive platform will help you to understand two different views, because we often academics in fields, because at a time we see that students who are interning in various institutions feel that there is some gap between theory and practice, and especially subject like ADR and arbitration, even some criminal law, you should have a practical knowledge, right? So that's where we thought we will have this kind of aspects. And in fact, I'm very much thankful for you to given me this opportunity so that I can learn some practical aspects. At the same time, I can join with these young minds and interact with them. Thank you, Johnson sir and Morgan sir, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. So I just want to ask Mr. Marisport regarding the background on which the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 was enacted by India.
Yeah.
Can you give a brief background?
Yes.
What was
Yeah.
the law before 1996,
Yes.
and why was it? Why has it? What was the necessity for such a law to be introduced?
Yeah, in fact, sir, first of all, we have to look at it. What is arbitration? We can get into that. If you allow me to discuss that one, sir, may I go to what is arbitration?
Yes, you may start from there.
Yeah. Here, arbitration, it's a kind of panchayat model. On a lighter note, don't take it off panchayat. I'm talking about regular panchayat model. In this, what actually happened, village elders used to hear the dispute, especially commerce and semi-commerce in nature. Commerce and semi-commerce in nature. We have Kula, Puga, Sreni, Nyayadis, even king also do this. Here, in our inbuilt, ancient Indian inbuilt, we have that mechanism. Whenever a dispute arises, instead of giving it to court, we ask some elders who are neutral. They used to decide the case. This was followed. But what happened after Mughal and even various people come undertaken the territory, then that system got damaged. Once Britishers come, then they have modified our entire system. Still, this Puga, Sreni and Mahajan, in fact, Mahajan is a community which, if you look at it, they used to resolve lot of trade disputes through neutrals only. So in turn, what happens, instead of going to court or going to king, people used to resolve the disputes through neutral. So this is what arbitration is. We have whatever the dispute we have in a private dispute in nature, it is not a crime. Any private dispute, which is in civil and commercial in nature, we from the ancient period, we used to refer it to the village elders to resolve. This is what arbitration does. A neutral third person will be hearing the dispute and he is finally giving the decision. Please remember, the neutral person will be adjudicating the decision on merits. This is arbitration, right? Which is differ from mediation and negotiation. We will come to that later. So here, what actually happened, once British has come, that system a little bit collapsed. So even what happened, British government has enacted Arbitration and Conciliation Act in the 19th century for India also, but it was not that much prevalent. Even 1940 also, Indian, that is British Indian government amended that act. But what happened, that act had given lot of scope for the court to intervene. As a result, what happened? There were some issues, but then after independence, Indian government, in the virtue of amending that act, but still not much done. Meanwhile, India was the signatory of New York Convention as well as Geneva Convention for enforcing arbitral award. As a result, 1961 we have enacted enforcement of foreign arbitral awards, but that was a separate act. Then one interesting thing happened in the year 1985. UNCITRAL, United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, which constitute a kind of panel, and in that they deliberated upon having model law on arbitration and conciliation. As a result, they have given some model laws on conciliation as well as arbitration, and India being the signatory of UN and UNCITRAL, it has decided to adopt that model law and it has ratified it. So based on this sequence of event, India has enacted a new law in the year 1996 based on UNCITRAL model law on arbitration as well as conciliation. That's where this act is known as UNCITRAL model law on Arbitration and Conciliation Act. And please remember, this act also included the 1961 Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Award Act. I hope, Johnson sir, I would be able to explain it.
So if I may comprehend what you have tried to say.
Yes, sir.
In the post-liberalization era,
yes,
there were a lot of businesses happening across the globe.
Yes.
And whenever there is a contract, you can necessarily believe there is going to be a lot of disputes also.
Yes.
So whenever you have a marriage, you will have a lot of divorces.
Yeah.
So exactly similar to that, whenever you have contracts, you are going to have disputes. And resolution of disputes seems to be a very difficult thing when it comes to go across the jurisdiction of a particular country. And nowadays, what happens is that I can explain the scenario in a much better manner. One day, one client came to our office. He had a contract with a Chinese counterpart. And he was supposed to buy aluminum scrap from China. And what happened is that the contract was for an amount of 6 crores. And the first consignment came, there was no issue. When the second consignment, there was a difficulty. And there was a dispute that was arising because the consignment did not come. This gentleman, what he did was that he had a arbitration, he had a dispute resolution clause, but it was a pathological clause, which we will be discussing at some later point of time, because it is neither an arbitration clause nor a mediation clause nor any other approved model of this thing. And therefore, what I suggested is that you will have to try and settle with the client there in that jurisdiction. So then they had a big fight there. There was a police case and a lot of issues have arose.
Yes.
So the ideal, what do you call, advice that we could have given to this client was that suppose you have an arbitration clause where institutional arbitration is the dispute resolution mechanism. Yes. You could have very well got an arbitration award from the arbitral institution and you could have executed in China, because China do not accept Indian decrees.
Yes.
And not to speak, they don't even accept US decrees. So getting a decree from a civil court in India will not work. So China being a signatory to the
New York Convention,
convention, and they will not accept ad hoc arbitrations which is prevalent in India. They accept only institutional arbitration. So this is the contextual relevance, because many people are going to are having contracts beyond this jurisdiction of India. So once you have this cross-border trade happening,
Yeah.
You need to you need to have a dispute resolution mechanism, and the only mechanism that is available is arbitration, because of the Mr. Marisport was mentioning about the convention, New York Convention, where there are, I understand it is 156 countries
Yes.
have already signed.
Already tried.
They say that we will accept your arbitration awards, we will recognize your arbitration agreements. Therefore, the acceptability of arbitration is so huge. So, if you are looking at becoming a lawyer in a local jurisdiction, maybe I think that it is a outdated type of practice that you may be looking at. You should necessarily be looking at arbitration as one means where disputes are always cross-border, and dispute resolution through arbitration is the best mode. We don't have a similar law even for mediation, but we have a convention in mediation convention happening last year. Probably a similar procedure will be there insofar as mediation also, that may be in future. These are my comments to what Mr. Marisport was mentioning. Can we go to the
Sir, I would like to just get into a quick word about that jurisdictional aspect. Especially the high aspect which you have highlighted, especially which conceptually also further I would like to emphasize. If you allow me, I can go with that.
Yes.
Yes.
You may
Actually,
proceed.
yes. Especially Johnson sir highlighted why arbitration and how arbitration. Here, please remember Section 2F of Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which highlighted about international commercial arbitration. Here, don't confuse with the terms. Especially arbitration, if you look at it, which Johnson sir highlighted, especially Hello, am I audible?
No, sir. We're accidentally muted.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
So here, after post-liberalization, forget about foreign contracts, even domestic contracts, some of the loan contracts, especially if you are in a business entities, even some consumer contracts which I could come across, they are inserting arbitration clause. So that's where you must aware what is arbitration, and especially you are involving trade with Amazon India, but it is the office is located in actually in US, and you are dealing with Flipkart, and you are dealing with PayPal while transferring the money. If you look at it, they have some dispute resolution clause. So that's where you should know how you are supposed to proceed. And there, please remember, China, I'm telling you, except arbitration, too tough to enforce decree or any kind of judgment given by any of the courts in China, any countries, because China is very, very tough to enforce other countries' laws. Similarly, let us take India and Pakistan. It is too tough to enforce arbitral award passed by India and Pakistan because there was no reciprocity. However, in case of arbitration, that's where UNCITRAL has paved the path for resolving commercial disputes. That jurisdictional issue, there are three set of jurisdiction. One is pecuniary, another one is that which country is supposed to decide the case, closest connection, and whether this dispute is capable enough settle or not. These issues may not arise, I'm not telling completely, but may not arise in case of arbitration because of that New York Convention, which has provided the enforcement facility. 156 countries, we can easily enforce our arbitral award. That will actually really help the parties, and which will easily resolve the disputes, because which actually help us to reduce the time as well as our energy. If you want to enforce, let us say there is a dispute between India and USA. Now Johnson sir is arguing for US, I am arguing for India. What we will suggest to our clients in case of litigation, we always advise our clients to stand on our own law, right? But at the end of the day, we may not resolve the dispute. But in case of arbitration, the neutral third party, we may appoint any person as a neutral arbitrator. He may be from UK, and he will decide the case based on UK law, whatever we closest connection. Then that award will be easily enforced. This is what we want. We want quick, speedy, as well as very, very enforceable settlement, or rather resolution of the dispute, which I would like to highlight, sir. Johnson, sir, over to you. Hello.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So we have a slide. I think that you can see a slide now. That slide is relating to the, what do you call, United Nations Commission on International Trade. We popularly call it as UNCITRAL. They have formulated a model law, and the model law was designed to assist member states in reforming and modernizing their laws on arbitral procedure so as to take into account the particular features and needs of international commercial arbitration. It covers all stages of the arbitral process, from the arbitration agreement, the composition and jurisdiction of the arbitral tribunal,
Yes.
and the extent of court intervention, to the recognition and enforcement of the arbitral awards. All these things are covered in the arbitration model law. Model law formulated by United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. Now, what happened is the United Nations requested the member states to either adopt, adapt, or get inspiration from this particular model law and make their own national law. So what happened thereafter is that India just copied the model law and created our 1996 Act. And we found it extremely difficult to perform since 1996 till late 2015, when we had an amendment passed. And thereafter, we had another amendment in 2019. There are other countries like Singapore and UK who had taken advantage of the situation and passed similar laws in the same year, and they became very, very successful in the field of arbitration. So UK is one country that has totally rejected the model law, and they have researched and did an exercise where they made their own law. So we have two laws which got inspired from the same model law, that is an English Arbitration Act, and we have a Indian Arbitration Act. Mr. Marisford, can you just explain as to how our Arbitration Conciliation Act would look like, and maybe how many parts, what are the different parts that are contained, and give some idea as to what is the provisions that are actually applicable insofar as conduct of arbitration is concerned.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Actually, our Arbitration Act broadly contains 3 parts. First, in fact, 4 parts, but I put it as a 3 because of I combining 2 parts into one. First one is domestic arbitration. Then second one is international commercial arbitration and enforcement of foreign arbitral awards. That's based on which is on international arbitration or arbitral award, especially Geneva Convention and New York Convention arbitral awards. Here, there are 2 parts, but these parts are having similar provisions. But and talks about enforcement of Geneva arbitral Awards as well as New York Convention Arbitral Awards. So those provisions are similar. Then you have one part on conciliation. Of course, that conciliation part we no need to look at, but certain extent we have to look at conciliation because it has its own connection with regard to section 30 of Arbitration and Conciliation Act, because section 30 falling under part 1, that is section 13 talks about arbitral award, and based on settlement also sometimes arbitrator can pass an award. So that time there is a slight connection with regard to conciliation part. Otherwise we no need to look at conciliation part now. We will focus on Arbitration Act. And please remember, as Johnson sir mentioned, this entire part 1, which is exactly copied from institutional model law, except certain provisions which we have to make a slight modification in accordance with India, especially Jammu and Kashmir status, you all are aware. So that's where the certain slight changes. Otherwise, remaining part provision as it is we have incorporated. In fact, institutional model law, original model law was not that much liberal. In fact, it had given some kind of appeal mechanism, but 1996 Indian Arbitration Act was very advanced. I'm talking about act perspective, very advanced than institutional model law. Then later 2010 institutional model law got amended, and whatever the advanced provision we had, actually institutional model law had incorporated that provision. A slight example I am giving, in case of any jurisdictional issue. Now what institutional model law, original model law said, you have to challenge it, and till the time the challenge was there, then you have to stay the proceedings. That was the case. But in Indian Arbitration Act, it was not the case. Let the court decide the jurisdiction challenge, whatever the challenge you have done. But till the time, arbitral tribunal can go and pass an award. This was the advantage has given. Now the same provision have been incorporated in institutional model law 2010, and some countries amended the same provision later. But Indian Act had that provision, which we have to remember, right? Other than that, 2015 this act got amended, and there were some issues. Please remember, it's not about issues in the act, but issues while implementing or while interpreting the provisions. That's so these amendments are there. Otherwise, these amendments are not at all required, because our act is very, very vast. As an academician perspective, I am giving my view, right? And Johnson sir may have different view. Yes, Johnson sir. Hello, Johnson sir.
So you have to unmute, sir.
Yeah, I don't agree with Mr. Marisport saying that this was a very ideal law to be created. I would rather say that this was we just forgot many things. While you copy something, you don't apply your mind and you have problems. So this is what exactly happened to India. And the story from 1996 to 2015, if you are interested in learning, just go to the Law Commission report of 243, Law Commission report, 243rd Law Commission report, and you will see that there is a bench constituted, then you will have a larger bench, then further larger bench, interpreting the provisions of Arbitration and Conciliation Act. People do not understand what is the meaning of what you call public policy of India. And every other thing was brought in within the provisions of the public policy of India, and all the arbitration awards were set aside by the district judges. So this was a hopeless exercise that has happened for India, and you will find one statement in the 243rd this thing, which says we had an Arbitration Conciliation Act in 1996, and UK also had an Arbitration Conciliation Act 1996.
Yeah.
So in the year 2013, the revenue generated from the legal service by the legal service industry to UK was 23.5 billion pounds.
Yes.
23.5 billion pounds. I do not know how many zeros are there for this particular.
Yes, converted into currency.
This is what was generated by every other person wanted England as a seat of arbitration, because they had a very, very, very good law. And I am also passionately very close to this particular law, because I happened to study English arbitration law during my diploma, PG diploma in arbitration.
Yes.
So I will give you one small example. The Constitution of India had fundamental rights. We forgot to add fundamental duties.
Duties, yes.
And once we added fundamental duties, we did not add something like what is the consequence of violation of this
duties,
fundamental duties. Do you lose your right to vote? Do you lose your right to be posted in a constitutional position? Nothing like that. No, absolutely no consequences are there for this fundamental duties. But you will find in the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, Section 33 of the English Arbitration Act, you will find a very interesting provision which is adapted from India, which I seriously believe that it has an Indian origin, because it contains something like the duties of the arbitrator.
Yes. Duties of
the arbitrator. 3 duties of the arbitrator are provided. You should give equal opportunity. You should take every step to complete the process immediately. And one more thing, I just missed. Anyhow, just refer to Section 33. What is the consequence of this violation of Section 33? Your award becomes, there is a serious irregularity.
Yes.
The court will consider that it is a serious irregularity on the part in the award because it is because the arbitrator has refused to perform his duty. So they have found a very easy mechanism to find out what is a good arbitration award and what is a bad arbitration award, something like that. And we were struggling to find it interpreted. Supreme Court sat in one bench and the other bench, and the whole confusion regarding appointment of arbitration, whether it is a judicial order, whether it is a administrative order, whether the Chief Justice is doing this kind of an act. The whole process was messed up because people did not understand what is arbitration and what is the purpose of arbitration. See,
sir, may I, sir?
Yeah, you wanted to comment on my
yes sir, I would like to. Actually, what happened, even if you look at that UK Arbitration Act, which has several appeal mechanisms which Indian Act per se not have. But the beauty of the UK is the way they have implemented the act. As you highlighted, the way they have systemized, that's where the credit. In fact, in UK, everybody can be arbitrator, but that is not the case in India, because that adjudication order, or whether it is a judicial order or administrative order, becomes a question. Because what happened, the arbitration become a kind of a post-retirement benefit for some people, right? That's how it has been somehow misled. Even the process of arbitration also conducted like a normal CPC hearing as per the trial court hearing. So this is what the problem which India faced at the time of in the way of implementing level, which I feel.
I agree with you
Yes.
on that. So let us move on to, I think
Yes.
that there are things, many things that we have to discuss.
Yes,
So
yes.
let us move on to the next. We are just trying to introduce to our participants what is the basic principles contained in the Arbitration Conciliation Act, and we don't want you to we are not intending to teach you law as is always said.
Yes, yes, yes.
Learning process is your process, it's not the process of somebody who teaches. We will just assist you in the process of finding out the law, and for which I believe that certain principles which are underlying in the model law will help you. And the English Arbitration Act has clearly spelled out the general principles.
Yes.
But no other statute clearly spells out the general principles underlying the model law. So we can find the principles are there hidden in the part 1 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act. Now, what are the general principles? The general principles are provided for the purpose of interpreting the provisions of the English Arbitration Act. Whenever you have a doubt, you just go and read the general principles and then you try to interpret. That's what the provision requires. General principles is contained in section 1 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act. This is the English Arbitration Act. The provisions of this part are founded on the following principles and shall be construed accordingly. A. The object of arbitration is to obtain the fair resolution of disputes by an impartial tribunal without unnecessary delay or expense. B. The party should be free to agree how their disputes are resolved, subject only to such safeguards as are necessary in the public interest. And C, in matters governed by this part, the court should not interfere except as provided in this part. We have a pictorial representation of these principles. One is that the fair resolution of the disputes by an impartial arbitrator without unnecessary delay or expense.
Johnson sir.
Yeah.
Johnson sir, I would like to just give a clarity about how the arbitration works and how the fairness actually emphasized. Just give me a minute. Within a minute, I would like to try to complete it because it is very must, I feel.
I will
yes.
I'll just complete my reading and
yes,
I'll give you an opportunity to. I actually wanted you to be speaking on this.
Yes.
Okay. Each principle you will have to be talking.
Sure.
And the second one is the party autonomy, meaning the party should be free to agree how their disputes are resolved, and limited court interference. These are the three basic principles that are contained in section 1 of the Arbitration Act of English Arbitration Act. I wish to hear from Mr. Marisford regarding his comments on these principles and how it actually works and what are the implications.
Yes. Thank you, sir. And especially since we have our young students, before getting into the discussion, with 30 seconds, I restricted myself, explain what is arbitration in procedure level. I am explaining. Then we can able to deal with the these principles. It will helpful to them. Here, in case of arbitration, let us say myself and Johnson sir is having the dispute on purchasing of let us say some seeds, right? Let us say some essence, right? Now Johnson sir is feeling that I have delivered the item, but I feel that it is not delivered properly, so I'm not going to give the money. It is a normal monetary claim. So we have a dispute clause which says that it shall be reserved to arbitration and Mohan sir will be the arbitrator. Now please remember, based on the agreement, we have the dispute resolution, and then here the arbitrator will come and hear the case from both parties and he will resolve the dispute. Now what happen if I say Mohan sir will be the arbitrator and here sir is saying, Johnson sir is saying no, he can't, he may be biased towards you? Then we have to go for the help of court, and court will appoint arbitrator in here. Finally that arbitrator will hear. This is one way. Other way also, parties can do agree in the following way. You can refer section 10 and 11 for this, and even 9 also certain extent. Here what happens, sometimes parties say that, okay, let Marisport also appoint one arbitrator, let Johnson sir also appoint one arbitrator, and they both can appoint one more umpire. That is, appointed arbitrator may appoint one arbitrator. Here, please remember, these three arbitrators will sit together and decide the case. Now let me come to the first principle, fairness. Fairness means what? Please remember, arbitration, as already I highlighted, it is based on agreement. Parties agree to settle the private disputes. At the same time, they have to, the arbitrator is supposed to follow equal treatment of the parties, and he always gives the opportunities both the parties equally. Even if he is conducting oral hearing, he must get the consent of both the parties. And whatever he is making the communication, he has to make it both of. And if there is any biasness, that is, he is having the relationship with other parties, he has to disclose. So that's how he has to ensure the fairness. Other than that, nowadays what is happening, party appointed arbitrators. I have given the example. Let us, Johnson sir and I am having the dispute. We have the arbitral three arbitral tribunal we have constituted, and I am appointing, let us say, Mitra as an arbitrator, and Johnson sir is appointing Gomes sir as an arbitrator, and so they both supposed to arbitrate some X. Now here, what these two arbitrators are dealing, whenever I am arguing and Mitra is saying, yes, Mari sir is right. And whenever Johnson sir is saying, yes, he is right. Now here, what these two arbitrators are doing, they are doing unfair job. Please remember, arbitrator can't be act as a counsel. That's where the fairness comes. Once they appointed, they always maintain the neutral. They may be appointed by one party X, but still, as an arbitrator, you have to focus on both parties. Either you be a sole arbitrator or you are in the three arbitrator panel. Still, you have to maintain your equanimity and treat the party, both the parties fair. And party autonomy, that's very, very interesting. Unless party agree, there is no arbitral tribunal. And in that arbitration, it gives a party to choose place of arbitration, number of arbitral tribunal. Either it could be 1 or 3. Okay, you can go up to 5, but rule is that you should have odd number of members. You should not have even numbers. But some countries are having that even number provision, but don't have even number provisions. Otherwise, you will have a confusion in the tribunal. So better have odd number of tribunals. So it is advisable either 1 or 3. Then you can go with, as a party, you can choose which law is applicable to your arbitration agreement and which law is applicable to your contract, and everything as a party you can decide. For example, myself and Johnson sir, I already told you it's a domestic contract. But let us assume I am belongs to US, Johnson sir belongs to India. Now we can choose that UK law is the applicable law instead of US. That is possible. We can choose, but not all the cases. But most of the cases you can choose some neutral country law as a governing law, because that gives more advantage. Or sometimes what happen, you as a US person, I can say that no, India law can't be applicable. Even the contract is enforceable in India, I can say that no, let US law is a governing law, because US law gives more advantage. So as a parties, I can choose, and accordingly we can resolve the disputes. Even venue also, what we can do, we can say that either it will be India or it will be any other place. So these flexibilities as a party they can have, which is otherwise known as, in arbitration language, competence. Latin term, which means party autonomy, right? And minimal intervention of court. Yes, this is interesting. But Indian context, of course, Johnson sir will disagree. But please remember, institutional model law, whatever gives a scope, Indian Act incorporated, but at the time of implementation, it's something different. But let me explain minimum intervention. If here institutional mandala says that the court supposed to be the complementary element for arbitral tribunal. If there are some blockade or some issues with regard to our functioning of arbitral tribunal, that time court will be the helping hand and to help. So in that way, what happened? Let's say some interim measures. Generally, if you're providing interim measures, it may not be enforced by the tribunal because it is a private forum. So that's where court can come and enforce that interim measures. Similarly, enforcement of arbitral award, court supposed to come, and sometimes taking the evidence, because that time what happened, parties may not be there in the same country, so arbitral tribunal can't issue subpoena or kind of warrant or summon for coming. They can issue, but parties cannot be bound. So that's where the arbitral tribunal seek the help of court for compelling the party to be a witness. So those things, even examination of witness, court can help the arbitral tribunal for this. Apart from that, if by chance the arbitral tribunal has passed award in some way wrong, there are some issues. Section 34 lay down lot of grounds. Of course, we will be discussing later. So those grounds, some irregularity, then the court may struck down the arbitral award and help the aggrieved party. Otherwise, court should not intervene. Even if there is any valid arbitration agreement, the duty of the court, irrespective of whether that dispute is supposed to settle or not, the court always refer the matter to arbitration. This is what institutional modern law recognize. Section 8 of Indian Arbitration Act recognize. After amendment also, 2015 amendment also it recognized, but actually happening something different, which Johnson sir could able to highlight.
Yeah, I have a few comments regarding the party autonomy. In the context of litigation, once we try to compare litigation with the arbitration, I think that we need to highlight the comparison a little more better. In the case of, I think that I will try to formulate a few, and Marisford, I think that you will be able to complement, add to what I am trying to enumerate. Yes. So, in the case of litigation, the party autonomy seems to be very, very, very less. You cannot decide who should be your judge. You cannot decide what is the procedure that you want to follow. You don't have a choice regarding the confidentiality of the certain very, very confidential informations relating to your business or your inventions or things like that, which are very much important in a particular type of business. Suppose you have a dispute, you will have to go and file a suit, whether you want or not. You will have to file a plaint, then you will have to wait for the written statement to come, then you will have to wait for the issues to be formulated, then you will have to wait until the trial begins, then we will be included in the list, then the parties will be cross-examined, and then you will have to go for a hearing, then you will have a decision, then comes the appeals. In arbitration, we don't have any such exercises. The parties may say, I have a dispute, I want a decision. This gentleman called Marisford is going to decide my dispute. I don't want any reason for my decision. I just want to say here from this particular arbitrator whether I am right or he is right. So you can even agree to the extent that you don't require any kind of reasons for your in the arbitration award. You can say that I want an engineer who is having specialized knowledge in a particular field to be the arbitrator. You can also say that the proceeding shall be in English, or you can also say a lot many things regarding the procedure, the manner of appointment, the manner in which the evidence should be taken. You can say that I don't want this Evidence Act business. I don't want the Civil Procedure Code business. I just want a fair procedure which is contemplated under this first general principle. You just treat us fairly. We don't want cross-examinations. We can go for a document-only procedure.
Yes.
You can say whatever you want in your arbitration agreement, and you have the right to say such things, and basically the parties are the masters of the dispute. They can say how the dispute is going to be resolved, and there is absolutely no appeal. That's one interesting thing. There is no appeal for an arbitration award. People tend to think that there is an appeal. There is no appeal for an arbitration award. What is found in Section 34 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act is certain grounds on which you may challenge an arbitration award. It is not a provision for, there is no question of reconsideration of the facts and law insofar as an arbitration award is concerned. Then the question of delay. You do not know when this gentleman, Judge Munsif, is going to give you the first trial court judgment. You do not know when the first appellate court is going to do that, when the second appeal is going to be disposed, when the High Court, Supreme Court is going to hear your special leave. But here you can be very definite, saying that you have a dispute, you have appointed an arbitrator, the pleadings are completed on day so such and such a day. Now wait for the next 1 year. You are going to have an arbitration award, or there is going to be some consequences for the delay. So this kind of a mechanism is now put in place. You can say number of arbitrators, how the arbitrators are going to be appointed, and all these things can be incorporated into your arbitration agreement. Probably we will be speaking about the arbitration agreement in detail at some point of time in a later session. These are my thoughts immediately that I felt. I think that you might have got a better picture of the story. Mr. Marisport, do you want to add something to what I have said?
Yes, sir. Especially you were talking about that litigation versus arbitration, right?
Yes.
So here we have to first of all understand, in case of litigation means the forum is public forum, not private forum. So the moment whatever the documents you have submitted to the court, it is visible to public at large. Everyone can come and see, except family law matters. No other matters are in camera, right? Even family law matters also very few. So as a result, the information known as to public at large, that is one thing. And especially the commercial disputes, which are not only very huge, at the same time, what happened, these people may be rivalries, but there are some third person may be rivalry to these two. So that's where the maintaining secrecy of their business deal is very, very important, coupled with speedy disposal of the case. So that's where this party autonomy help in arbitration. So there they can fix the time. Here in case of court, you can't fix the time. Well, either CPC fix, or otherwise based on the CPC, judge used to fix. Even you have a lot of scope for adjournments, right? Order 17. Right, so that's that, but that kind of scope may not be there in case of arbitration. Even a very well planned arbitration, I'm not talking about India per se, very well planned arbitration can successfully complete the arbitration within 6 months, depending upon the claim. If it is huge claim and if it is huge investigation required, then it may take 1 year or 1.5 years. Otherwise, it can easily conclude within 6 months. There is no problem. In fact, which Johnsons are highlighted, DocTex, based on the documentary verification alone, arbitral tribunal can decide the case without doing further evidence. They just go through the document and they find out, okay, for some person only done. Okay, based on the document, party A supposed to pay so-and-so amount to party B. That's matter ends. Okay, that kind of simplified procedure, you may not able to adopt, or you can't, as a party, you can't impose to the court. This is very, very interesting, and cost also very, very minimal. As a party, you can decide. even there is a possibility that you can say that winner will pay the cost of arbitration. That is also possible, right? At the same time, even appointment of arbitrators, you only appointing the arbitrators, you have to bear those things also there. But any case, it is more advantage, especially if you are involving huge commercial dispute, and it is very much required to resolve it quickly, and confidentiality also there. That is very much integral part of the trade. Then arbitration is a suitable dispute resolution for you.
Yes, let us move on to the first principle.
Yes.
We are now attempting to find out these principles in the Arbitration Conciliation Act of 1996. So probably if you have Bare Acts, you may refer to the provisions which are being discussed, because I know that most of you are not very familiar with the provisions, so that you may find it a little difficult to understand by just hearing. So you may keep your Bare Acts also ready with you. If you have a doubt, just refer to the provisions, then you will get a better clarity of what is being discussed. So the first principle is that the fair resolution of disputes by an impartial arbitrator without unnecessary delay or expenses. I think that Mr. Marisford has mentioned about the impartial factor. Now, the impartial factor has been statutorily incorporated into the Arbitration and Conciliation Act in the year 2015. How to maintain the impartiality of arbitrators. We have 3 schedules put into place. Schedule number 5, 6 and 7. I wish Mr. Marisford highlight on these schedules, and also with reference to the challenging provision as contained in section 12 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act.
Yeah, in fact, 12 to 16, we have to deal with that.
Please be reminded that we are not trying to take you to each section. We are just giving you an impression, giving you some areas we will be missing. We will not be discussing every section, but we hope and believe that you will be encouraged to read the entire thing, because again, I do not want to repeat, learning is a very private affair as far as an individual is concerned. And a teacher cannot do the business of making you learn. That is not, that's really difficult. So we will just encourage you. So can you just briefly give the connection between 12, Schedule 5, 6 and 7?
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry for interfering. Like, actually, we're running out of time, so it would be nice if you could continue with 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
We have got an interactive section more.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Sir, Johnson, sir, may I go, or how we will proceed, sir?
If you want to conclude, we will conclude. No problem.
Okay, I'm just take 2 quick minutes and I will stop here. Let us listen the young minds, which I feel. So here, with regard to the section 12, especially as I told you, being an arbitrator, you can be appointed by one of the parties. Okay. So it doesn't mean that you have to be loyal with that party. You have to be loyal with both the parties. This is very much important. So that's where whenever you have been appointed as an arbitrator, you have the duty bound to disclose whether you have any connection with their party. Which way you have to find out the connection? Here comes 3 schedules. Schedule 5, 6, 7. Here very much we have to focus on Schedule 5 and Schedule 7. So here their connections are like this. You may be the arbitrator counsel for some cases. You might have argued previously before the arbitrator, or the arbitrator might be having the kith and kin relationship, or some cases the arbitrator might have the relationship with the parties or with the advocates. So those things, even some of the law firms deal with particular arbitrator. So these things are supposed to be disclosed. Please go through this schedule 5, 6, 7, which talks about various relationship. And please remember, if these relationship met, especially section 7 comes in, then that arbitrator can be challenged. So here, if anybody is having that relationship, then he has to disclose first. After disclosing, if the party say that no, if you are having this relationship, I don't want you to be the arbitrator, then he has to be removed, or he himself gone out of the tribunal. Then new arbitrator will be appointed. Otherwise, what the arbitrary tribunal, like courts we have seen, some of the cases, some judges told that I have interest in this case, but still I can still, if you parties agree, I can hear. Similarly, in this case, if the parties are billing, okay, we understood, yes, you have a relationship with so and so, still we are allowing you to deal, we don't have any objections. So once you have given the consent for the arbitrator to hear this case, then later on you can't withdraw the consent unless some sufficient mishandling with the biasness happen. Then you can't withdraw that particular consent. So you can't challenge on the ground of biasness. So this is very much required, and these schedules got inserted in the year 2015, and based on IBA and some other model rules with regard to impartiality, which the impartiality aspects. So with this, I'm concluding my side. Over to you, Johnson.
Two things. One is regarding Schedule 5. Schedule 5 is included in the red list of the IBA soft laws, which has now been statutorily included into the it is a list of relationships. You just go through the here in case of relationship that comes within the Schedule 5, nobody can waive that. You cannot waive that. It is the arbitrator cannot continue with the arbitration. But suppose the relationship is in the nature which is specified in Schedule 7. A waiver is possible by the parties. Or the parties do not challenge that arbitrator. He can continue with the arbitration. There is no difficulty. And therefore, once you read this, you should have to read the soft laws formulated by the IBA, International Bar Association, soft laws regarding impartiality. Read that also. Along with Schedule 5 and 7, you will get a better understanding of what are the circumstances under which an arbitrator can be an arbitrator and cannot be an arbitrator. So this protects the impartiality part of the first principle, that is what is being highlighted. The procedure for challenge is contained in Section 12 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act.
Yes.
Now coming to the second part of avoiding unnecessary delay and expenses. I think that these things have been discussed while Mr. Marisford was discussing earlier. We have a provision incorporated in 2015, that is Section 29A, which says that the time limit for an arbitral award, it is 12 months from the date of completion of the pleadings. That is the statutory period which is provided. Extension is possible, however, there are consequences. The consequences would be that the arbitrator may lose his portion of the fees and things like that. Such kind of a situation may arise if he simply delays the process. In international arbitration, as expeditiously as possible, an endeavor should be complete. Every endeavor should be done to complete within 12 months. That is what is provided. Then the provisions for avoiding unnecessary delays. You will find Section 24 resorting to case management protocols or passing of things like in the process we do procedural order number 1. You refer to order 15A CPC. it has been introduced along with the Commercial Courts Act. You will find how the cases are to be managed in a commercial court. And this particular procedure was there being followed long back in arbitrations. So what happens is that the procedural order number 1 is an order which is passed at the time when at the time of first meeting. The arbitrator is going to allocate the time. The arbitrator says that arbitrator has 12 months to deal with the case. So he will allocate 1 month's time for statement of claim, another 1 month for defense. Then he will ask whether you want any discovery to be done, whether you want any particular type of interrogatories to be answered, and do you want any expert evidence to be brought in. For all these things, the whole time will be set and timelines will be prescribed. Even for cross-examination, there will be timelines prescribed. So by going through the procedural order number 1, you can equate it to as a script of a movie like Bahubali or something like that. Entire thing is scripted, and based on the script, the whole process starts. And what happens is that if somebody delays, the cost will be heavy cost will be imposed on the person who causes delay. This is the method that is being internationally followed. Then we have the fees. Fees has now been prescribed. In the 4th schedule, we have the fees prescribed, and based on the sum of dispute. And the Kerala High Court has fixed a fees much lesser than this, and I think that nowadays judges are not interested, and young arbitrators have a great opportunity, because the Kerala High Court has fixed a fees less than the scheduled fees as contained in the 4th schedule. Based on the quantum of amount, fee structure is there. And one method to reduce the cost and things is that we go for a method of institutionalized arbitration. We will be discussing about institutional arbitration moving forward. We come to the second principle of party autonomy.
So pardon me for interfering, sir. So we are actually running out of time. So we have got only 15 minutes. Scheduled till 6:30.
You just completed. Don't worry. Next 5 minutes.
So we've got an interactive.
We will complete it within 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, 5 minutes. We will just run through the what do you call the slides, and we'll go for the interactive session. Party autonomy, we have section 10. The parties are free to determine the number of arbitrators. 11(2). Subject to section 6, the parties are free to agree on a procedure for appointing the arbitrator or arbitrators. Section 13, subject to subsection 4, the parties are free to agree on a procedure for challenging an arbitrator. Section 19(2), subject to this part, the parties are free to agree on a procedure to be followed by the arbitral tribunal conducting the proceedings. Section 22(1), the parties are free to agree upon the language or languages to be used in an arbitral proceedings. Section 23, the parties are free to agree on the period within which the statement of claims and defense is to be filed. Section 24, the parties to agree whether to hold oral hearings for the presentation of evidence or for oral argument, or whether the proceedings shall be conducted on the basis of documents only. Section 26, parties can agree upon regarding the appointment of experts and the manner in which the expert may prepare the report, or as regards the evidence to be adduced by the expert. Section 29A, the parties may agree in writing that the dispute may be resolved by a fast track procedure. Section 31(3) may agree upon the procedure insofar as arbitration awards are concerned. Then the third principle also, I think that we have discussed in detail. The only areas where the courts may interfere is it is in the nature of an assistance that is offered to the arbitration process that is under Section 9. For interim measures, injunction, attachment, appointment of receiver for protection of the subject matter of the proceedings, or Section 9 would allow the international commercial arbitration even if the place of arbitration is outside India. See proviso to Section 2.2, the parties may however agree to exclude this jurisdiction. This simply means that in an international commercial arbitration, the Indian courts can interfere under Section 9 of the arbitration. This is a new development that has happened. And Section 14, to decide on the termination of the mandate on the ground that the arbitrator is unable to perform or he has withdrawn from his office. Certain contingencies the arbitrator do not perform, and the party can approach the tribunal and get the mandate of get the termination of mandate of the arbitrator. Then we have Section 27, court assistance to take evidence. The court may issue processes to witnesses to give for giving oral evidence, or also for the process of purpose of procedure of documents before the arbitral tribunal. Section 34, application to for setting aside the arbitration awards. We have the limited grounds and time limits have also been prescribed. It is not, however, an appeal against the arbitration awards. It is certain grounds are specified. Now, again coming to the limited interferences regarding the appeals. Appeals are provided under Section 37 of the Act. The court, from orders of the court, the following appeals are there. In Kerala, it goes to the High Court. In the other jurisdiction, in Kerala, this appeal is entertained by the High Court. Refusing to refer the parties to arbitration under Section 8. When a suit comes before a court and the court refuses to refer the parties to arbitration, even when there is an arbitration agreement, then an appeal can be preferred under Section 37 under the Act. And then we have granting or refusing to measures. We have just seen Section 9 provides for interim measures, and when interim measures are granted or refused, you can prefer an appeal under Section 37. And we have just mentioned about when an application under Section 34 is setting aside of the award is done, or it is refused to be set aside, you can prefer an appeal under Section 37. Then certain orders of the arbitral tribunal can be challenged in appeal. Accepting the plea referred to subsection 2 or subsection 3 of Section 16. It is relating to the challenge against the jurisdiction of the tribunal or otherwise. Such orders can be passed, challenged in appeal under Section 34. And granting or refusing interim measures. A similar type of interim measures which is provided under Section 9 is now available under Section 17. And interim orders passed by the arbitral tribunal can be challenged under Section 37 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act. There is no provision for second appeal. Thank you. So I think that we have taken you through this during our earlier discussions itself. So the provisions you will have to refer to and read through to get a better understanding about these provisions. Mr. Maris, what do you go for the question and answer session?
Yes. Actually, I thank you for everyone for patient hearing, and sorry for exceeding the time. But we happy that we have able to use the justification for at least that basic topic we could cover. In case of any doubts, also you can ask. We are eagerly waiting to interact with the young minds.
Yeah, definitely. If anybody have any doubts, then
yes, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
You please introduce yourself and what is your doubt? You please ask.
Okay, sir. Okay. So my name is Ransi Matthew. I am a research scholar in Nuance, Cochin. So my question is: in international law, international trade law, we can see that the parties can choose a forum law. The parties can choose a law of any other countries which they are comfortable.
Yes.
So can the same happen within domestic parties? If a party from Kerala, if two parties from Kerala are having a contractual issue, and whether they can come, whether they can bring such an agreement inside their arbitration agreement to choose a law outside our country.
Actually, the answer is no, because two domestic parties cannot choose foreign law as their governing law. That is not at all possible, because it has its own reason. Because if the contract is enforced in the same domestic, why you are choosing foreign law, right? So that's a big issue. Why you are choosing? Because of forum convenience, you should not go, right? Especially that aspect you have actually taken into account, and it's based on sovereignty principle. In
Okay.
fact, in arbitration also, especially if you are having two domestic parties and it is enforced in the domestic area, then you should not have a foreign law as your governing law. I'm talking
Okay.
about domestic arbitration.
Okay, sir. So can I ask one more doubt, one small doubt?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So if two parties to an international trade contract are having an issue and they have chosen they had received an arbitration award at the end, how can they enforce it in their respective nation?
In the respective nation where it is supposed to be enforced. For example, if you and me have a dispute, now if you are going to enforce that arbitral award which is in favor, then you will find out where is my property located, where I can get, you can get the money, right? So that
Okay,
country
sir.
only you will be approaching. So there is the possibility of enforcing that award, right? If it is monetary claim, you will be filing where I am situated or where my property is located.
Okay, sir. Okay.
You can file it before the district court in. Actually, it was earlier. It was a district court in Kerala. Now it is a commercial court in Kerala. Has the jurisdiction for I think that enforcement of arbitration awards. Because after the commercial courts have come, all these arbitration matters are now listed before the commercial courts. So you can enforce it. All what you require is three things. One is under the New York Convention. You read through part two. You will find you will have to have the agreement, certified copy of the agreement, arbitration agreement. Then you need to have a translation of that. If it is in another language, then you need to have the arbitration award, a translation of that. Then you file it before the court under the part 2 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act, which contains the provisions of New York Convention. You can enforce it through the district court or the commercial court as the case, where the assets are situated.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Okay, myself, Amina Islam, and I'm a 4th-year BA LLB student. Okay, so my query is, one the panelist in a competition told me that we should always concentrate on a legal aspects, I mean legal proceedings, if a client arrives with a issue, and also he stated that ADR methods doesn't necessarily need a lawyer, and it will be like a zero-sum game. And that part came to me, like, will this be the reason that most of our lawyers not promote?
Breaking, voice is breaking. After zero sum, what you are trying to say?
Yeah, like this zero-sum game. The question is,
No.
is this the reason that the most of our lawyers are not promoting ADR methods? That's the question.
Certain extent, I agree. Yes, the answer is yes. Especially if you look at it, Indian scenario, why arbitration act is not implemented. As I highlighted, arbitration act, certain provisions we were advanced that time, but still why it was not implemented properly. There were sometimes what happened, awareness is lacking, because sometimes lawyers also felt that, okay, if you promote ADR, then what happened? It might lose our revenue. That's one thing. But if you look at what Lincoln said, through ADR alone, you can earn lot, and not only earning, even you can earn peace. But that kind of mindset was not there. Even still, it is not there. Slowly, it is developing now, right? And that's one thing. Second thing, arbitration. If you look at it, here, who is holding that tribunal status? Who is appointed as arbitrator? In fact, I would like to highlight here, there are some well-known officer, judicial officer. At the time of delivering judgments related to arbitration, he was known as pro arbitration. But when he was appointed as an arbitrator, he levied heavy fee and he passed adjournment after adjournment. Later, Supreme Court asked him to step down as an arbitrator. So this was the thing happened. Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And
So I just want to add something to Mr. Marisport has said. Now, international commercial arbitration did not take off in India for obvious reasons that a few of which were mentioned by Mr. Marisport. The other thing that happened is that it is a part-time exercise for lawyers and judges as far as India was concerned. But in other jurisdictions like Singapore or UK, it was not like that. It was a mainstream thing. Even you will find in Singapore, you will have a minister for dealing with arbitration exclusively. A minister dealing with arbitration. You should understand the importance of that. And the volume of amount that is being transacted is huge. And we should not mistake ourselves by thinking that it is simply an ADR type of thing. I think that in the entire course, you don't study arbitration at all when the whole world is working on arbitration, because every trade and business is always international. Whenever you have an international business, you will have to go for arbitration because of the New York Convention and its huge applicability. So there is a huge scope for learning in arbitration because that's what we understand.
Sir, if the party is aggrieved by the arbitral award and genuinely believes that the arbitrator was biased, what is the remedy available?
Yeah, he can challenge the arbitral award on the ground of under the section 34, because biased arbitral award is one among the ground given under section 34. He can very well challenge.
And sir, how do you ensure the neutrality of the arbitrator?
Yeah, that's why neutrality of the arbitrator, right? There are various behaviors. And please remember, neutrality is not a constant one. It is a dynamic one and continuing one. Because from the beginning to till the end, how he is behaving, every decision, every action of the arbitrator matters. So if one element of biasness, please remember, now I am appointing Johnson sir, it doesn't mean that I can't challenge his appointment. Even I can challenge his own appointment on the ground of biasness under section 1213 if I come to know that he is biased. Similarly, if I come to know later while award is passed, something is there, then I can challenge. That is possible.
On a practical note, I can give you some hints as to how it works. Suppose an arbitrator takes an unfair decision. You need not be a silent spectator. You should necessarily file an application before the arbitrator. A proceeding should be there. You should speak your mind and let it be there in the record. We will later deal with it while section 34 application is concerned. If you be, as an advocate, if you be a silent spectator and receives all his thing. I have an instance. I can give you an instance. I don't want to name the parties. Sure. We had a case in which automobile dealer had a case with one of the major manufacturers in this country. And see, what happened is that the arbitrator was always continuously the same arbitrator. We definitely knew that this matter is going to be coming against us. What we did is that we filed an application before the arbitrator saying that, sir, you were an arbitrator in earlier proceedings, and you have given an arbitration award in exactly same facts against the against the dealer. So we believe that we are not going to get justice from you. So you may please step down. That is the best thing that you can do at this point of time to see that this impartiality thing is there, and especially in the light of the fact that there are some restrictions in the number of arbitrations that a person can hear as contained in the new schedule attached. So what happened is that he dismissed our application, and a very interesting thing happened is that we negotiated for a settlement, and we said that we will be able to settle the whole thing for 35 lakhs. If you give me 35 lakhs, I will settle it. The manufacturer was not ready to do that, and finally the arbitrator has awarded us 1 crore 60 lakhs.
Favorable award.
So this is the mechanism that you should be using. You should be having a very sound type of approach in these matters. So likewise, if they are also rather afraid of such kind of scriptures coming from courts. So it is possible to manage them.
Yes, Mitra, is there anyone?
No, sir. I think there are no more participants to ask any more questions. So if there are any more questions, we'll be continuing the session in our upcoming webinars. So it was indeed a worth listening and truly an advantageous webinar with both of you, sir. I am very much thankful to both of you. And I truly believe that this webinar really served its purpose very well. It was truly informational and advantageous to all of us here. So now that we've come to the end of our webinar, I would like to welcome Ms. Amina, an energetic and enthusiastic youngster, a law student, to deliver our vote of thanks.
Thank you, Tara. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks and fortunate enough to be backed by Law and Justice Research Foundation, LGRF, Trivandrum Chapter, an organization of diligent legal individuals. First of all, a big thank you to Advocate Johnson Gomes, Director of Cochin Institute of International Arbitration and Managing Partner of L. Expertians Associates for your efforts in polishing basic ideas and different topics on the topic arbitration. Much obliged to you, sir. Further, we are grateful to Dr. Maurice Food A, Assistant Professor of Gujarat National Law University. Thank you so much to you, sir, for gracing your works and findings on arbitration and familiarizing it with us, sir. Thank you so much. Now, I must mention my deep sense of appreciation to the brain and backbone of our Law and Justice Research Foundation, Trivandrum Chapter, Mr. Safi Mohan sir. Without you, this cannot be possible. Thank you so much for your guidance, sir. Now, I also extend my thanks to the coordinating forces, Neelima V. Nair and Advocate Sunita S. for their enormous aids to cooperate this special event. Thank you. And as importantly, I cannot thank everyone in it for their involvement and willingness of participation in this meaningful session, where we understood the conceptual basis of arbitration law. Thank you to each and everyone who supportively aided to make this session successful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Everyone.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you. Thank you, Safi sir.
Yes, Safi sir. Thank you, Amina, Mitra, and special thanks to Johnson sir.
You are always welcome. We will meet again soon.
Sure.